Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter. This is the show where I sit here and regale you with all the tabletop gaming stories and remember when something cool happens. So today, we return once more to the adventures of Ben, and Sally. Not because I like to do these pervy stories back to back, but because we're on episode 69, and I'll be goddamned if I pass up this opportunity. So, we had the hot springs throwdown, now we're gonna have fucking through the castle. And it's exactly what it sounds like. So, allow me to lay some groundwork. We had Ben, Sally, and Sally brought in a friend named Jessica, who was relatively new to D&D, but wanted to kind of get in on things. So, they approached me at some point one day after Gamers Guild, where I was at Western Kentucky University, and they said they wanted me to run a campaign for them where all of them played as the same class. And this was actually not the last time they would be doing this because of campaigns that came later. But I said, okay, what class do you want to be? They came back to me later. They said they all wanted to be rogues and run together as like a sneaky band of thieves or something like that. And I go, okay, well, there's all kinds of rogues. There's the face rogue, the dungeoneering rogue, the dodgy tank rogue, the duelist rogue. There's all kinds of different like specs that you can have for a rogue because they have so many skill points. They start with like 40 fucking skill points. So they can be built into a number of things based on where you put all their stuff. And, you can say that about any class. If there's 4 fighters running around, if there's 4 wizards, 4 paladins, having a group that's everybody's the same class can be interesting as long as nobody steps on anybody else's toes, because usually the reason to have all different classes is to make sure that everybody has, like, their thing. You don't play, if there's 2 fighters, one of them usually has a bow and arrow. Or if there's two wizards, one of them is usually a utility wizard and the other one is the throw the fireball wizard. But having 4 rogues, that could be very interesting. So I said, okay, well, make your rogues and we'll get together over at Big Ben's apartment. And, I don't really remember where this took place in like the chronology of Ben, and Sally, but they ran through several campaigns together, and this one was no different than the ones you've heard so far. So strap in, put on some headphones, check over your shoulder, turn the volume down, whatever you gotta do to make sure the prudes in your life do not hear of this, because it's gonna get explicit again. And again, I usually like to space out the stories between a bunch of others for Ben, and Sally. But hey, special circumstance. So here we go. Ben, Sally, and Jessica roll up their rogues, and we end up with, I've got a page of notes here. We end up with Big Ben being a halfling, Jessica and Sally are both elven women, and Fast Ben is a human. So kind of a nice cross-section of races as far as rogues go. And they end up in a big city somewhere, like 100,000 people. Pretty nice-sized stone city with gas lamps and stone streets and a pretty good local guard and stuff like that. But it seems that there is a necromancy afoot amongst the aristocrats, and the local guard has hired them to do some sniffing around in the back alleys, to check the black market, to, run around in the darker, shabbier parts of town where, people know who the guard captain is. They know who most of the local guards are because they have open-faced helms and stuff like that. They need some outside help to find out what's going on, because apparently over the past couple of months, like 9 bodies have popped up, all with the same circumstances of death. They look like they've been sucked dry of their life force. They're all shriveled up like mummies, and they've been like put in the river, put in the sewer, put in like alleyways where they think they won't be found. And those are just the bodies that they've found. There's probably more out there that have been, better hidden because it's hard to get out of this giant city carting a body around. So, left by the wayside, these victims all turned out to be from different, like, noble houses, like relatively important people. So the aristocrats are at each other's throats trying to figure out who this unholy assassin is and which house hired this person or these people, or if there's a cult going around. But clearly these are political killings, because these are all members of noble houses, seemingly at random. They all have different agendas. You know, this guy wanted lower taxes for blah-de-blah, and this guy wanted to park more trade ships in this port here than the law was allowing, but he was putting money in certain hands to make it happen. And, you know, this guy was marrying off his daughters willy-nilly to try and forge alliances. You know, none of them are, like, horrible people, but all of them had a little bit of baggage, so somebody wanted them dead. And judging by the nature of the killings, all 9 that they've found so far, being the same, clearly there is a necromancer or a cult at work. And they charged Ben, Sally, and Jessica to find these men and bring whatever evidence they could to bring them to justice. You know, even the slightest thing, like a book of necromancy or an elixir of undeath from their alchemy table, or a room that's covered with bloody pentagrams. Whatever you can find, adventurers, come and bring it back to us, and we'll send like 50 guys and arrest the whole household, and we'll take it from there. But we need you guys to do some sniffing around in places where the guard usually does not. They're like, okay. You know, they agree to a price. They agree to, do some shopping. They get some free potions, etc., etc. And they find out that there is one particular aristocratic house that is kind of prospering right now, called House Blackraven. And House Blackraven is hosting a party this evening, because theirs was one of the noble houses that arrived like almost exactly 100 years ago, when this town started out, when there was just a few houses, a few businesses. Blackraven was one of the first families, the first important families, to arrive here and kind of inject money into the local economy and make the place thrive and grow. And they're having a big party tonight, and anybody who's anybody is going to be there and, see and be seen amongst the aristocrats. And, of course, it's always suspicious when somebody is just so much more popular, so much more, rich, and has their thumb in everybody else's pie. It automatically makes them evil. So Ben, Sally, and Jessica decide to check it out. And of course they go that evening, which is of course when the party is, and they go, now is actually a good time for us to snoop around, because the house is full of people that aren't normally there. I mean, if we sneak in tomorrow night, then any asshole that sees us could raise the alarm. But right now, there could be like 100 people. This is like a 4-story mansion. There could be like an extra 100 people in there. We could actually blend in if we wanted to. So they go and they leave their roguish, like leather armor and stuff behind, and they get like party attire, like Ben get like bright blue tunics with tight hosen, and the women get like off the shoulder dresses that show off the cleavage, and Sally insisted on wearing her boots under her dress. So I was like, it's not like a super formal party. You don't have to wear tuxedos and arrive in like a carriage, but you want to wear something bright and festive while you're there. And it's not like a masquerade. It's just like a, hey, we're prospering and we're awesome kind of party. So chances are good they could probably slip in if they jump the fence or something like that. And they come back later in the evening with all their garb. They've all got like boot knives and like one potion like stuffed in their shoes or what have you. And that was kind of all the stuff that they brought with them. Like, this was going to be like espionage at this point, to kind of break in and see if everything was on the up and up, or if House Blackraven was hiding something. So now was a good time to go. And I was like, okay, you guys approach, and you see that party-goers are giving the guards posted at the gates of the property party invitations. You guys don't have an invitation. And they're like, oh, most of these people are arriving in carriages, or they're arriving in groups, from X house and Y house and this house over here. We can't jump them 50 feet from the gate. The guards will hear us. So what do they decide to do? Of course, Sally's there, so she's got to use sex as a weapon. She's like, you know what? I'm going to go and seduce one of the guards and get him away from his post. And I was like, okay, roll it. It's innuendo, acting, diplomacy, whatever you want to use. She rolls it. She rolls pretty high. She pretends to be a prostitute sent out to the gates by a drunken Lord Black Raven who wants to give his thanks for their vigilance during this important night. And she kind of pulls him off to one side behind some bushes to kneel down and give him a blowjob. The other guard is just kind of rolling his eyes while he kind of glances over. He's kind of standing there. He's got his hand on the back of her head while her golden hair bobs in and out of view behind this bush. And Jessica's like, I could probably do the same. And I was like, you could have done any number of things. There are back doors here. There's a fence you can jump. You could have forged your own party invitation just by glancing at somebody else's. There's 9 different things they could do. They jump straight to the blowjobs, because of course. I was like, all right, that's, this is a sign. This is what this game is going to be about. And Jessica goes up to this other guy. She doesn't roll quite as well, so they kind of get into an argument, which of course draws the guard's gaze to one side, and he kind of marches this woman off to one side. If you don't have a party invitation, you're not getting in, and rah, 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 rah. So this means that the gate is unguarded, so Ben and Ben sneak in while they're not looking. Or rather, they kind of tail in behind another group, so it looks like they're part of the invited party-goers, because one of them kind of just flashes their party invitation to the arguing guard, and he kind of waves them through. And I go, Sally, by the time you're done blowing the other guy, he's in such a good mood, he forgets to ask for your party invitation, so you and Jessica kind of just go back in as though you were sent from the house itself. And, he's already in his post-orgasm bliss, so he doesn't realize that you came in off the streets and not from behind him from inside the house. And he'll probably not realize this until tonight when he's lying in bed. He'll be like, wait, but you'll already be long gone by then. So the 4 of them sneak in this way. And Sally just kind of wipes her mouth this she's in her element already. She's in a social standing where she can use sex as a weapon, and God knows this, that she's going to at every opportunity. Okay, so how are they going to get into the house? They're on the property now, and they realize that there are already several carts parked to one side of the mansion itself that are filled with groceries and bags of rice and flour and things like that. It's well, we could, Big Ben goes, we could just grab some groceries and go in through the kitchen entrance. They're already dressed as party-goers. They could have easily wandered in the front door. But no, just I'm sure other DMs, you've seen this, where your players make things way too damn complicated for their own good. They already got in the door. There's not any guards at the front door of the house. They could have just walked in and mingled into the party. But no, they've got to go in through a side entrance and sneak their way in. They're rogues after all. They've got to do some sneaky shit. So Fast Ben, who is a human, grabs an armload of grocery sacks, and Big Ben, who is a halfling, does much the same. He grabs a big sack of cooking carrots to follow them in. The women go in the front door to so they can kind of split the party and case the place and see if there's anything unusual about the mansion itself. Do the gargoyles turn and watch you as you go by? Are there magical hold spells on the windows? Anything unusual that they might find out just by looking? Because, rogues have such high search and such high spot. And I think it was Jessica who had like knowledge arcane or knowledge something like that, so she could spot magic runes and read them and understand what they did if there was like a defense on the house that they needed to know about. Like if they stole something and left with it, would the house like go off some kind of alarm? And the women wander into the party, and Big Ben and Fast Ben wander in with like sacks of groceries into the kitchen entrance, and they go through the mud room and they set the groceries down and stuff like that, and they wander into like the servants' kitchen, like the great big kitchen. They're serving 100 people, and they've got waitresses and butlers tripping all over each other, going back and forth. And there's, of course, one big portly lady, oh, that's not hot enough. Stir that a while longer. Make sure that gets out of there before it gets cold, and all this different stuff like that. And Fast Ben decides, I'm going to seduce the head kitchen lady. And I go, why? He goes, well, she might know something. She might know something interesting. We've got to get by her anyway. And I was like, just walk across the room. I didn't get to say this because, I am the DM. I am the voiceless narrator. I don't get an opinion and I don't get a vote. So why he decided to do this was not clear to me. But Fast Ben decides, this lady's under a lot of stress. She's kind of tubby, kind of portly. She doesn't get to go see the handsome nobles all the time. She's back here in the kitchen making sure everything behind the scenes works. He's got 17 charisma and a hard-on. I'm sure he could probably make this work. And I was like, all right, well, yeah. Go chat her up, I guess. Roll diplomacy or innuendo, or if you've got anything better. And he rolls it, and he rolls really well. Big Ben, who is our halfling, which is kind of funny, Big Ben the halfling, wanders amongst the cooks and stuff to see if there's anything unusual going on, or maybe he can find the entrances to the servants' passages, which would go all through the house, out of sight, out of mind. While Fast Ben kind of chats this lady up, and she's a little bit greasy. She's big around the middle. She's got the gigantic tits. She's very well fed. She's covered with flour and bits of cooking oil and stuff like that. But she's got this handsome man chatting her up all of a sudden, who is adamant to have her attention and have her back to the rest of the room, while Big Ben sneaks about, pawing through everything while nobody's looking. Because halflings can easily pass unnoticed, according to Tolkien. But, he grabs like an apple off a table. He grabs a couple of carrots. He's just putting shit in his pockets because he can. Meanwhile, Fast Ben is chatting this woman up and decides, yeah, I'll go on and seduce her. She's under a lot of stress. She'll probably be an easy lay. Women like sex just as much as men. And on and on. I was like, I don't know what his plan is exactly. Like, she's gonna spill some kind of atomic secret during the pillow talk. But after some smooth words and like 4 or 5 really good rolls, I checked his dice. I stole his dice when he went to go get another slice of pizza or something, and I rolled it like 6 times to make sure it wasn't like a set dice. But no, it was legit. And this was back during the era when I think it was 3.5, where the dice, the plastic that dice was made out of, you could take a D20 and put it in the microwave for like 2 or 3 seconds, something like that, a really infinitesimal amount of time, on the number that you wanted, and it would become a set dice. Now, I don't recommend you do that because it is plastic and paint, and, it's not good to have in a place where you put your food, but it was a practice back then to have like cheating dice by using your microwave. It's not a good idea, don't do it. But I suspected he was cheating, and I checked his dice, not so much. So Fast Ben seduces this woman over into like a storage room, over to like where there's extra furniture and crates and stuff like that. And, he kind of kicks the door closed, and he's, like, backing her into the nearest crate. And, she's lost just looking at his handsome face. He's used to dealing with butlers that won't give her the time of day, and all those stupid waitresses that, they're teenagers, they're still learning shit, and they're not worth the time of day. suddenly this handsome man in party garb who smells good and is very handsome, and all this is just into her, and her stress level is so high, cooking for 100 people. Oh yeah, he gets into her pants. So he basically like bends her over a crate, and I was like, okay, well, roll for it. And I give him it's like your D20 times 5 times your level in XP. It's a drop in the bucket, but whatever. So he rails the head chef lady in this storage room, and he kind of like checks over his shoulder after a while. It's like, you grasp her hips and you do her doggy style, and you've got a fistful of her hair, and she squeals, but of course no one hears her. There's like 40 cooks running back and forth, and waitresses and butlers and all kinds of stuff, trying to make sure this party goes smoothly, because this mansion is gigantic and there's so many people. So there's no one to hear this woman squealing in orgasm 2 or 3 times. And after a while, once Fast Bin is done, and if you've ever slept with a woman and made her orgasm like 2, 3, 4 times, she's not going anywhere anytime soon. So the head chef lady kind of goes into a sex coma, just kind of laying there over the crate with her head in her arms. And he's like, yes, mission accomplished. And he redoes his fly. It's like, and I was like, what, party neutralized? What are you trying? You could have just walked past her. But no, Fast Ben decided he wanted to compete with Sally this time around. So there we go. And then Big Ben, having seen them go into the side room, kind of peeks in, and he sees what Fast Ben has done, and he goes, should I have a turn? And Fast Ben's like, well, you're probably a little too short, and she's already unconscious, so go get your own. But this woman is asleep with her head in her arms, dripping with Fast Ben's seed. So. Did I just mix them up? I may have. Fast Ben is the human. Big Ben is the halfling. So Big Ben would have come in. Sorry, I get them backwards now. Big Ben would have stuck his head in, and Fast Ben's like, go get your own. But they move on, still again dressed in party garb, to go and mingle in this party. And again, the women, Sally and Jessica, have already gone in, and they're talking with these people, and they're listening in on that people. They're picking up wine glasses as they go by. And it's a big party. There's a big great room with people just laying over couches, talking in front of the mantle, hanging out by the windows. There's a big long banquet table. There's a tiny orchestra in one corner playing on the strings and stuff like that. There's a lady with a harp, commanding the attention of like 13 guys, just kind of sitting there admiring her elven beauty and stuff like that. It's a gathering of the who's who of this town, celebrating the prosperity of House Black Raven. And eventually, Sally comes to find that Lord and Lady Black Raven are in the room, and after listening in for a while, finds out that they have a lot of kids. They've got 3 sons and 2 daughters. And I start to see the gears turn, and I was like, that's what this game is. We are fucking through the castle. That is exactly what this is. And Sally kind of strokes her chin for a second, and she goes, well, I can't seduce Lord Black Raven because, his wife is on his arm. I wonder if I could go find their oldest son. How old is their oldest son? And she kind of does the listen check and listens in on a few more conversations. Finds out he's like 32. She's an elven woman, so she's much, much older than him. But he's old enough to have experienced a woman's warmth and to want more. So rumor has it, women throw themselves at him all the time, and he's quite the hornball because he can be, and et cetera, et cetera. So she's going to go find the oldest son, heir to the name of Black Raven, and see if she can't seduce him and see if he'll talk afterwards, do some pillow talk with her. And it doesn't take long to find him. He's wearing like a great big BR golden medallion around his neck. He's not very hard to spot in the crowd. He's surrounded by by people that are interested in talking to him. He's doing toasts, he's clapping guys on the back, shaking hands, kissing the hands of the wives that come by, etc., etc. He's sampling the little cocktail weenies as the butlers go by. It's a busy time to be him. But Sally, zooms in on him like a shark, because of course she does. And I say, Sally, he's got the medallion, he's got a family signet ring, he's dressed to the nines in, this burgundy long suit and a golden belt and stuff like that. He's very much the party boy, it seems. And Sally goes, all the easier. And she goes to kind of work her feminine wiles, leaves Jessica behind. Jessica's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Go listen in on the other family members, see if there's anything weird going on with the family. She's like, ugh. So she does the listen check and just kind of drifts about the room like a beautiful lily flower. But, Sally's taking this guy off for some sex. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to call this game later. Fucking through the castle, whether there's a reason for it or not. And I look over at Fast Ben, who just kind of shrugs. And Sally works her feminine wiles on this guy and kind of gets it across that she's looking for some action. And of course, he is the eldest son of a very powerful lord, so sex is like fast food for him. It's basically an everyday thing. Women throw themselves at this guy constantly, and he kind of eyes Sally up. Again, 17 charisma. She's a real looker. She's got the nice off-the-shoulder party dress, and he is eager to see a bit more of her. So he takes her hand and leads her off to one side and off into a side room. And of course, Ben and Jessica kind of mingle, but kind of wander in that direction as well. In case anything happens, they got to look after her. So, after a while, he leads her down a hallway to a metallic minotaur statue that is kind of sticking out of the wall, like from the waist up. It's mounted on the wall. And he takes his signet ring and he puts it up to one of the Minotaur's eyes, and it swings inward to reveal a hidden passage and some stairs. And the rest of the party's like, oh, he's taking her down to his private love nest or something. Or that's where the hell mouth is, and he's just going to throw her in, So, young Lord Blackraven takes Sally down, and yes, sure enough, there is a small bedroom off to one side, and there's also a portcullis that leads God knows where, and some rooms that have just hanging herbs and vegetables. There's a side passage that leads into the servants' passages and back to the kitchen. This is basically just a side area, but there is a resting place here. He's not going to take this random wench all the way up to his private chambers, but there's a bed here that's plenty big for both of them. So he's all too eager to race her zipper down her back, throw her dress off, and start working his magic. He's like a young buck at this point in his life. He's young, dumb, and full of cum, and he's all too eager to mount this wench as well. And Sally is, of course, into it, and they start going at it on this bed. Meanwhile, Ben, and Jessica are wandering by, and they just kind of stop in the doorway, and they kind of lean around the corner, Scooby-Doo style, to watch Sally get sexed up by this guy. And it's a small room, so, sneaking by him, his peripheral vision alone would be enough to spot them, but he's having his way with Sally at the moment, so he's very distracted. And Sally goes, I yell and scream and fight him and stuff like that to make sure he earns it, to make it look that way so my party can sneak by. So she's got him by the back of the head while he's going at her to make sure that he only looks at her while her party kind of sneaks by in the background, because it's a very small room. Even no matter how good at sneaking you are, if you don't have some sound cover, you're not going to sneak by anybody, especially in a small room like this. So while Sally puts up a good, quote-unquote fight, the party sneaks by and goes down the passage, and again, they find an herb cellar. They find a private wine cellar that's got dust and cobwebs all over it. They go further and further down into the earth, and they find this, like I said, this portcullis that is closed. It's this iron gate, and, both of the Bens lean down. They try to, lift it with all their might, but no, it's locked. And there is a panel there that looks like it's made of crystal, and it's much the same crystal as the eyes of the Minotaur statue. So they're going to need the young Lord Blackraven's signet ring to open this. And they go, "Ah, dang." So by then, young Lord Blackraven has flipped Sally over and is railing her doggy style, and he's spent himself more than once, but he's not especially. He's a very selfish lover, so Sally is still edging by the time they get back. And by the time her party kind of comes back, she sees them out of the corner of her eye, and she's like, "Let me finish, let me finish." And, Blackraven thinks that she's talking to him, so he's kind of laughing and poking fun at her and things like that while he's trying to see to his own sexual needs before she gets hers, because he's an aristocrat and he's selfish like that. But finally, once Sally gets hers, Fast Ben just kind of wanders up behind this guy and just punches him in the back of the neck. So he sees white for a few moments, and then he falls unconscious, and then, off the bed and tumbles to the floor. So he's knocked out. And Sally kind of lays there splayed out. She's got jets of semen all around her crotch and her inner thighs, and she's gasping for air at the fury, the virility of this young lord that was just going to town on her. And she and her party kind of stare back and forth at each other I was gonna talk to him after. He may have known something. It's well, there's a lot of locked doors around here that require his signet ring. So Jessica kneels down and she gets the signet ring off his hand and she puts it on herself. He's "We can use this to open that door all the way down." There's the further down we go, the more suspicious it gets. Why would you hide an herb cellar and a wine cellar behind a magic lock and stuff like that? There's got to be something fishy going on around here. So they get Lord Blackthorn, or young Lord Blackthorn, or Blackraven, excuse me, and put him up in the bed, and they position him, and they rumple the pillows and the blankets and stuff to make it look like he fell asleep and she just left without him, which is probably to his liking, given that he treats sex like fast food. So they get his ring and they wander on after Sally cleans up and puts her dress back on and all that good stuff. And, they go past the herb cellar, they go past the wine cellar, down, 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 all the way to this portcullis again. And Jessica steps up with the ring, and she puts the ring on the crystalline panel. It's like the dial pad, but it's not, it's a medieval setting, so there's no numbers on it. And the portcullis rises, and they go down further into darkness in a spiraling staircase. It's this is getting more and more suspicious the further down they go. And, they get to the point where they're way down underground. And they get to what appears to be a great room. It's rectangular in shape. There's a big pit in the middle, and there's an alchemy table to one side that's churning and frothing. And there's a few bookcases with a bunch of gnarly-looking books on it that are, the runes on the spines are glowing and stuff like that. And they're "What is this?" And they go to the pit and they peer inside and they find a chaos beast has rooted itself in the bottom of this cellar area. And for those that don't know, a chaos beast is basically an aberration plant Venus fly. It's like a Venus flytrap if it was from another dimension and had tentacles and shit. And everybody stops and they look at me and I go, "Oh, now you're offended." Fuck you. I'm not the one who told you to fuck your way through the castle. You see a tentacle monster, that's where your brain is going. So don't look at me for none of that. But they can already kind of see what's coming, and don't get ahead of me. They kind of looked down over it for a while, like, clearly this was conjured. It was not like planted here, because it's an otherworldly, like, Lovecraftian monster with teeth and like a mouth and a stomach, but it's like a big ball of tentacles with like a Venus flytrap mouth on it, and it can't like lift itself and move, because it's more plant-like than anything, but the vines can certainly reach for stuff, so they've got to be very careful as far as how close they get to this pit. And they look around, and of course there's the bloody magic circles and the bones and a couple of skulls and bits of flesh hanging off of hooks and weird shit like that. They're like, yeah, this is like a necromancer's lair. There's no way that it's not. And it's like, the only thing is, the family of Blackthorn is fairly large. There's Lord and Lady plus the 5 children plus all the guards plus all the anything else. So we got to narrow it down. Is this a cult? Is it the whole family? Is it just one person? It's hard to tell. So they start ruffling through like all the necromancer shit that's up on the bookshelf. Like, again, I think it was Jessica who took like knowledge arcane, so she could read stuff and see what it was, but couldn't like use it. So she's flipping open stuff and like, yeah, here's a drain life spell that explains a lot of the deaths. Here's some necromancy. Here's raise dead. Here's create skeleton, create zombie. All the regular like really dark juju that you not ought to be messing with. The only question is, who is casting all this magic? Because some of this takes quite a bit of components, quite a bit of materials that you don't often find just out on the market. So they're messing with the alchemy table when who should wander in, having seen all the open doors, than Lord Blackraven himself, the man of the house. And he's got a posse of like 6 or 8 guards with him. He must have gone down to like the wine cellar or something to grab like, I will personally go and get the wine for the party myself. Let's keep the party going. And he's like, why is the portcullis open? Guards. And he brought like 8 guys with him. And you remember, our 4 party members are only dressed up in like their party garb. So like a knife is the best thing that they've got. These guards are in like leather and chainmail, and they've got like proper long swords and spears. So this is not going to go well if it goes to a melee. And of course, Lord Blackraven Senior gives them the "oh, you've seen too much" speech, and says, kill the men and rape the women and, get rid of them. They cannot be allowed to escape. And he turns around and he thrusts out a hand, and the door slams itself closed, and the hold portal spell appears over it. So until he dies, or until he opens the door himself, they can't leave. So, both Bens pull their boot knives, and, Jessica and Sally do the same. They're like, we've got our knives. And this 13-person battle breaks out, including Lord Blackraven, who I guess would basically have wizard levels, because if I remember correctly, necromancer is a prestige class, but probably not. I treated him as like a certain level of wizard, so he could do stuff besides necromancy. So hold portal was one of those things, and who was it? Big Ben, the halfling, did not do so well. The size difference and 3 guys pushing on him with spears and swords, he gets thrown out over the pit and down into the mouth of the Chaos Beast, and he is immediately just chewed in half. And the tentacles start flying everywhere as the beast starts searching for more prey. It's like it's awake now, it's active. So Big Ben was not happy. He was basically like insta-killed because he was standing on the edge of the pit when the combat started. So he basically got like charged and being that much smaller than the other guys, he took a dive pretty fast. And this long fight breaks out, and they fight and they fight and they fight until finally, Fast Ben goes down pretty hard, and he's only got the one potion that barely keeps him alive. They're cutting down guards left and right just with these little fucking knives, but they're rogues, based on technicalities and based on flanking and positioning and crap like that. They can get a couple of backstabs off to kind of survive this. But eventually they get argued down and like beaten up to the point where Sally is like, okay, we grovel, we surrender. And Lord Black Raven is like, no, you cannot leave. We will make examples of you and put you out into the street as more of those lifeless husks. Throw the man into the pit and rape the women while I'm setting up this life-sucking ritual or whatever he called it. It was life-draining. It was a life-draining ritual. Have some fun with them while I'm setting this shit up. And he wanders over to start like drawing his blood circles. And what guards remain, there's like 3 or 4, start kind of cracking their knuckles and throwing their weapons aside. It's like, this is going to turn into like a gang rape really fast. And I could see Sally thinking and like tapping her chin a few times, and as they're backing these women into the corner, suddenly Sally's like, I stomp my foot and deploy my boot knife. And I was like, you don't have your boot knife. You threw it down when you surrendered. He goes, no, my spring-loaded boot knife. And I look at her character sheet. Turns out she's got a boot knife like a mechanism in the bottom of her boot, and that's why she wore her boots under like her party dress, is so she could stomp and it would press the button and like a little like 3 or 4 inch knife blade would come out the front of her boots, and she just like kicks the first guy in the groin and he goes down hard like immediately, and then she does like a bizarre like Jackie Chan like spin kick to kick this other guy in the neck, and blood, blah, and he goes off to one side. And this combat reignites after Lord Blackthorn or Black Raven has crossed the room well out of range. And Sally eventually, like, they try to like grapple these women so they can hold them down while Lord Black Raven is doing this ritual off to one side. And they decide they're going to throw Sally into the mouth of the Chaos Beast as well. And they pitch her down into this pit, like two of them like holding her, while Jessica's trying to stop them and not doing a very good job because she doesn't have any of her weapons. And they pitch Sally down into this pit. The mouth of the Chaos Beast opens, and I was like, throw me an acrobatics check, otherwise you're dead. And she throws acrobatics. 20, because of course. So she does some bizarre, like, Jackie Chan shit to run up one of these vines and, like, jump off the sides of the pit like freaking Mario doing a wall jump. And she grabs one of the vines and pulls it along with her and throws it over one of the guards. The Chaos Beast realizes that one of its vines is holding something, yanks one of the guards down in, and then blood sprays in all directions as it chews up this other thing. It's getting a lot of food today. And Jessica and Sally manage to subdue and, knock out or kill the other guards before running over to deal with Lord Black Raven. And of course they've still got Fast Ben, who is badly wounded but can still serve. So they grab the knives. They grab like one of the guards had like a long sword. I think Fast Ben picked up one of the long sword, and they charge after this guy before he can complete like his blood ritual or whatever to start draining the life out of everybody left in the room. And they basically just run and stab him in the back, because by the time he whirls around to deal with them and like throw lightning in their faces, he's already got 2 knives and a long sword sticking into his ribs. So he goes down pretty hard. And then finally there's a silence. So there's dead bodies everywhere. Big Ben is dead. He's been chewed up. So their halfling friend is gone. These two elven women are covered with blood and gore. Fastbin is bleeding from all different kind of spear wounds. There's 8 dead guards. The Lord of the Manor, Lord Blackraven, is dead and provably a necromancer. The whole portal spell goes down because he's dead. And they're like, this is more than what we need. God, poor Big Ben. They kind of like do a religious gesture for his safe passage to the afterlife, and like, grab what you can. These guys had money purses on them. They had weapons on them. You could probably sell some of their crap. That whole big bookshelf full of necromancy books. There's your evidence. The alchemy set. There's your evidence. All this entire room is going to be crawling with guards by the time you go back and you report it. So they make it all the way back out of the house without fucking anyone else. And they report back to the guard captain, and they show him these books of necromancy, and they show him these vials of anti-life and all this other crap that they found down in this necromancer's lair. And it's like, you've done a fantastic job, and he gives them their money, and of course he gets like a battalion. It's late at night, but he gets these guys up, and he gets them armored up, and they basically take over this party. They charge all the way into this guy's house, like shoving guards aside, and they go down this secret passage. The whole, party's over. Lord Blackraven is dead. His son gets woken up, get up, what are you doing? And stuff. They're going to question him for hours. Is Lady Blackraven in on this? Are any of the other children in on this? What guards were brought in on this necromancer's plan? There's like 50 of the city guard running around in this one house. Nobody is going anywhere until they get to the bottom of this. But they have found the source of this necromantic plague that was taking out aristocrats and no one else, which was kind of a giveaway, but whatever. They flood this house with city guards, and Ben, Sally, and Jessica kind of stand there outside the fencing, outside the iron gates, just like watching, the shadows run by in all the different windows. The ladies, holding their skirts, trying to make a run for it before they get stopped by a couple of guards with spears. Where are you going? What do you know about all this? And they're going to be there for probably a few days while everybody gets questioned, while everybody gets processed and put in jail and all that kind of stuff. Some of them will pay their way out. Some of them have nothing to do with this, but they just pulled up a big weed in the garden that was this town. So Lord Blackraven is no more, and his oldest son will probably take over in his place, but his oldest son is not a necromancer, so at least we've got that going for us. And Ben, Sally, and Jessica kind of head off to the next job, and that was the end of that session, that campaign, if you will, to uproot this necromancer who was dug in on this city. So, a lot of sex, a lot of violence, a lot of blood, but such is playing with Ben, and Sally. So I hope you enjoyed that story. And I hope I will see you on the next D&D Stories. Keep gaming. Hi guys, T here. Remember to hit that like button for me on your way out. If you'd like to see artwork and maps from my gaming table, check out the D&D Stories Facebook page. Also, I have a Patreon if you'd like to toss a few gold pieces into your humble bard's hat. Links in the description below. Keep gaming!